Good evening, and welcome to the Select Board meeting of March 4th, 2025. We're going to open the meeting, but we're going to go right into executive session to discuss some contractual obligations. So can I have a motion to move into executive session?
So moved.
I have a motion made by Mr. Kratman.
Second.
I have a second by Mr. Mackey. Roll call vote. Mr. Ryder, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Mackey, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Kratman, how do you
Aye.
vote? And the chair votes aye as well. That's a 4-0 vote. So we are now in executive session. is East Point Energy proposed projects at Hillman Street and Rockland Street area. You're here for that. Can you introduce yourself with name and address for the record?
I'm Tyler Rinn, here representing...
Wait, we got to do the Pledge of Allegiance. I forgot that.
Yeah.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you all for that. Thank you, Mr. Mackey, for reminding me. Okay, if you can give us your name and address for the record,
Sure.
we'll let you have the floor.
I'm Tyler Rinn, representing East Point Energy. I don't have a Tewksbury address, but I grew up in Winchester, Mass., just down the street. Here on behalf of East Point, like I said, proposing a battery storage project at Hillman Street, 73 Hillman Street in Tewksbury. I know that you guys have spoken a little bit about battery storage and thinking about adding it to your use table, which is great, so I won't spend too much time on the particulars of energy storage, but just a quick introduction. It's a large-scale battery, essentially, so it stores electricity from the grid during low demand periods and puts it back on, typically between 4 and 8 o'clock when people come home after work, turning on ovens, TVs, plugging in electric cars, things like that. Energy demand goes up as solar and other energy production goes down. So we take that cheap energy from the middle of the day and put it back onto the grid later in the evening. So a couple benefits for the town for this project. The big one is kind of a low impact to social services. You know, this isn't a housing project. We're not increasing kids in schools. There's no impact to police. The sewer, septic, things like that. It's kind of sit and forget, other than trainings for the local fire department, which we'll touch on in a little bit. Another piece is cleaning up the site. It likely qualifies for brownfield as of right now, and so as a part of that, we'll be remediating the site and kind of cleaning it up from there. And then just a couple other benefits. I touched on the lower cost of energy. This helps stabilize the grid, kind of acts as a local backup as well at that substation. Just a quick, some headlines from the news the past couple of months. The Boston Globe has been talking about, need more storage to support wind and solar. Down in Texas, we've seen huge savings for consumers because of these battery storage projects. In California, during heat waves, they've been able to kind of supply that last bit of energy to make sure the lights stay on. And the New York Times had an article recently about how these batteries are transforming the electrical grid right now. And so we're hoping to bring that to Massachusetts. Obviously, this is a super important part of our projects, energy safety, and we actually have a representative from ESRG who's here to answer any other questions about fire safety. He's an expert in battery storage safety, so after I finish my presentation, you can come up and answer any questions you have around this in particular. But just want to touch on a few things here. Primarily, we have to adhere to numerous different codes, NFPA 855 being the main one. It's a very thick document that includes everything from blast protection, stranded energy, to decommissioning and things like that. The other piece is these performance standards. So UL, or Underwriters Laboratory, does lots of testing on these, including UL 9540A, which is a full-scale burn test to test kind of how fire propagates within these systems. So our batteries project will adhere to all of that, as well as Massachusetts codes and standards. First responder training. It's a long partnership with local fire departments and things like that. We met with them back in, I want to say November, and then last Thursday, somebody from ESRG actually came and spoke with the local fire department kind of on a battery storage 101 class, as well as I believe the fire chief from Chelmsford and Andover were at that as well. So the mutual aid there. This project will have a custom emergency response plan that ESRG is helping us develop in coordination with the Tewksbury Fire Department. So that's kind of a long-term partnership there, and annual trainings will be provided too, which is also required under 855. And then finally, 24/7 monitoring, all sorts of different sensors for off-gassing and temperature and electrical faults. And it's also a proven technology. It's the same kind of batteries that are in your cell phone, your laptop, things like that. Just a quick introduction to East Point. We were founded about 7 years ago, and we solely focus on battery storage. So we don't do solar, we don't do wind. This is our bread and butter. We have a number of projects down in Virginia that we sold and are currently operating, and we have a few down in Texas that are under construction as well. That will be the first that we operate as well. So this is Hillman Energy Center. Not sure if you guys can see it on your screens in front of you there, but this is a rendering that we just had done. It's not finalized, but wanted to have some visuals for you. So it's a 125 megawatt project, currently showing is 4-hour duration. It's enough to power about 125,000 homes in Massachusetts for 4 hours, so it's a large project. It'll be connecting into the National Grid substation just across the train tracks up by the Great Swamp. It's currently sited on about 4.5 acres of industrially zoned land. It's currently a kind of staging yard for construction, landscaping, and all sorts of different businesses there. And then it's a significant capital investment. These projects aren't cheap to build, and so it'll be a large increase to local taxes as well. Just a little bit more kind of showing you where exactly it is. So you can see Main Street there in the south, Emerald Court just to the east, and obviously the substation that we'll be connecting into to the north across the train tracks there. Getting a little bit closer, you can see kind of what's going on the site currently. Lots of trucks, lots of storage. Finally here on the right, you can see an aerial photo that the landowner actually sent us when we were negotiating the project with one of his drones. So you can kind of get a sense for what's going on there. And then in the bottom left is what we're proposing. Just a quick site plan. A couple little markups on here, but just want to give you a little bit more of a sense of kind of the scale of the project. There will be a small collector substation on the north, and then about 165 of these battery containers throughout in that kind of grid arrangement. There will be a 28-foot sound wall on the eastern side, so off of Clinton Street there, and that's just to mitigate any sort of noise pollution for the nearby residents in Emerald Court. And then there will be a 15-foot sound wall off of Hillman Street that will have 2 gates for access. So quick next steps. This project is going to be permitted through the State Energy Facility Siting Board due to its size. So in terms of local permitting, we still need to get a Conservation Committee approval due to some impacts to the buffer area of wetlands off of the Great Swamp, as well as a small pond just to the north of the site. So that's the local permitting path. And then we're planning to submit by April 1st to the State Siting Council, which will send you a full package of all the documents that we're preparing for that, which will include full renderings, a sound study, EMF or electromagnetic field reports, all of that, and then you'll be asked to kind of comment from your staff. And if you have any concerns. But we've been meeting with staff as well. We had a meeting on Friday with the building commissioner, town planners, town manager, all of that. And then I guess finally, continued community engagement. We're planning to have a town hall March 18th to kind of bring together some of the members. I think we're inviting about a half-mile radius, but open to anybody that would like to join. We'll have somebody from ESRG, a number of people from our company as well, just to kind of answer questions and represent the project. So that's all I got for you, and feel free to spend the rest of the time with any questions for myself. All from ESRG or our VP of Development is here as well.
Okay, well, thank you for your presentation. We'll start with Mr. Kratman. Any questions?
Yes, I do. Thank you. Initially, I had some questions about the humming and the noise of what it may be for the seniors and people that live in that area. What is I've heard some answered, but do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're currently conducting a sound study to kind of figure out exactly what the noise impacts will be. However, the initial results have been well within the Tewksbury Code and also meeting the state standards as well, which are incredibly strict. So I don't have an exact number for you, but that's why there's that 28-foot sound wall, is to mitigate and make sure we're well within the state code for sound impact.
One of the things I do like about this is that once it's built, there's going to be little impact. There's not going to be a lot of vehicles going there. But I do have the question about construction.
Sure.
So how long, if this is issued and you got permission to build it, how long would it take to be, and how, just talk about what it would take to build this. Like,
Sure.
you're going to fill this area, you're going to level it, or what are you going to do, and the noise that may be associated with the construction while you're doing it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think construction typically is 9 to 10 months from groundbreaking to having all the containers on site. There is currently that warehouse that'll be demolished as a part of the project. Standard construction hours, things like that, but probably no more construction and trucks in and out of that site than there are today during the normal construction period. And then after it's, the batteries are brought in, it's, like you said, it's maybe 1 car per day just for maintenance and operation.
I believe one of the roads leading to that is like a private road that's in pretty poor shape. It just, they fix it each year, but the trucks going through there make a lot of noise. So if it is under construction and you are using that, I would recommend that maybe you do a little maintenance to that, work with whoever has that private road, because the trucks going up there, especially empty trucks going in and out, make a lot of noise with those bouncing. So if there's a way to offset that during the construction period, I'd appreciate that. And then I just have the long-term concerns. I know you have safety here, but, a lot of residents have asked me about this, what's the chance of leakage of the batteries going into the wetlands and contaminating? What is the concerns about these things catching fire or having an explosion with the power surge? So I know you have some safety experts here, but if you could talk a little bit about that to ease the concerns, I'd love that.
Yeah, so first on the point of kind of contaminants to the wetlands, more than understand, especially the proximity to those. In 2 instances, these facilities had fires in New York, I believe last summer, and so the state put out a full report where they did soil samples, water samples, all of that, and they found no sort of contamination. And I'll have Paul come up and answer more questions about fire safety. I know they've done some testing as well. His company does all the UL testing or the fire safety testing as well, and so he can kind of answer questions around contaminants coming off of that.
Yep, come on up.
Can you state your name for the record, name and address?
Yeah, my name is Paul Brown. I work for ESRG, Energy Safety Response Group. Really good question as far as like the runoff, if you will, or some issues with that. Our company has done well over 300 medium to large scale testing. We have a lab. We take all the safety systems out inside the BESS units, so there's no safety systems in them when we do these testings. And all our runoff is tested, and to date, we've had 0 hazmat, because haz waste come back as haz waste. So that's really not a concern at all. When they follow NFPA 855 and UL 9548, like Tyler's had an opportunity to talk to you guys, these companies do an outstanding job putting these safety systems in, and then with us coming behind them and obviously testing them and putting them to those measurements, we've had nothing to date come back.
Are there any requirements for putting monitoring wells in by the state or feds with these facilities?
Monitoring wells?
Yeah, it's just the tip. I work for the Highway Division, so it's my lingo on what it is. But when you're building a gas station, you're putting something in, what they do is they put monitoring wells any place where there could be something that could be contaminating and spreading. So what they do is they put in something here, and then they make you put it so much further.
Like a catch basin.
And it's just what it does is it just shows the flow if there is anything. If there's any contaminants coming off of there, they make you install monitoring wells. So if you're not doing it, that's obviously showing that there's probably not a requirement to do so, but I just didn't know if there was a requirement about it.
Yeah, my understanding is that there's not any sort of requirements for that.
Okay.
However, as a part of our development process, we have dug groundwater monitoring wells on the site and have done the kind of water sample testing. So we have a baseline for that. And I imagine that if that's something that you'd like to see, you can more than give that comment to the siting council. And
Can I ask a question about that?
Yep.
Yeah.
And maybe point of clarification, I'm sorry if I missed it because I was out of the room, but the current site, I mean, is going to be, just there's a dramatic improvement because of what's going on the site currently. And I think as you would mention that there's there's some level of 21E requirements that have to take place before you move into that site?
Yeah, so there are a number of contaminants that we found so far. Nothing that exceeds certain thresholds, but there is certainly some contaminants.
So my
in the
point
soil,
is some level of exploration will be done on that site
Absolutely.
to satisfy that 21E requirement.
We're still waiting on the final report,
Yeah.
but yeah.
Okay, so it'll be a little bit of a cleanup, actually, on the site. That's good. Then if you can go into the concerns about the, fire or those type of things, the explosion of the, I've seen, conductors blow on poles and things like that when you get surges, and that's my immediate response is, if there is a power surge or something like that, is there a possibility of these things, exploding, or you got them all next to each other, God forbid something like that happened?
So I can't answer every possible thing that could potentially happen. However, if you look at it from a fire standpoint, what's put in play with these and the way the manufacturers follow NFPA prevents a lot of things from happening. They're monitored 24/7. They'll have an SME, a subject matter expert, that can make their way to that site if an alarm does trigger. A lot of times it's down to the cell. There's just some kind of glitch to that cell, and they're able to pull those modules out and then get them replaced effectively and efficiently fairly quick, and nobody even knows about it. If there is an event, which is honestly pretty rare, when you look at best units in the United States and you look at the incidents that you hear about, it's very, very low. But if there would be an incident, it would be contained to that unit. And we had training too with the fire department last week, and they brought up some really good questions, and we'll continue to have that dialogue with them. What we do is we help the company and the fire department work through what's called an ERP, Emergency Response Plan, and a Hazardous Mitigation Analysis, HMA. So if there would be an incident, we would train with them way before they hit the switch, to get the best unit up and running and what to do, what are the standards or the proper way to go about it. For us, we found to protect your exposures, to take care of the adjacent unit and let that unit do what it's supposed to do and get that subject matter expert there to help facilitate with it.
One other just quick piece on that. The batteries that we're currently speccing for this project are SunGrow Power Titan 2s. So each container is fully NFPA 855 compliant. And as part of that, they have, they're called deflagration vents on the ceiling. So if there is kind of a building of gas within it, and there is an explosion, it would go up and not out. And so that has greatly limited any sort of kind of exposures that might be affected. The other piece is they've conducted a full burn test on these, where they actually tested kind of a normal layout of how these batteries would be on a site, including only a 15-centimeter spacing in between two of them. They put one into full thermal runaway for 30 hours, and it never spread past that single container. It was burning at like 1,200 degrees Celsius, and the container 15 centimeters from it never exceeded 40 degrees. And that was with all fire suppression turned off, no intervention, no firefighting, spraying down other exposures, things like that, just to really put to the test kind of if something goes catastrophically wrong and there's no fire response, what would happen? And so there was no sort of propagation to adjacent units.
I'll pass it on to the rest of you. Thanks, that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Mr. Mackey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tyler, thank you for the presentation. Thank you for being here. Lots of good information. I'm personally a fan of uses like this. We're cleaning up a contractor yard with potential contamination, putting in something that's going to not only clean it up, but increase the tax basis. So you said the magic word for me when we were talking through that. We talked about some of the safety questions that Mr. Kratman raised. I am going to follow up with the town manager and the fire chief. This is where I defer to our fire department, our planning board, our conservation commission. I know I've heard a lot about these, do a lot of work on the ICS OT side of the house, so I'm not overly concerned. I've seen some of the worst things that can happen from cyber attacks targeting these, so I'm not concerned from that angle. You did mention something that caught my attention, though, which was you're capturing that cheap day energy and then putting it back into the grid at night, and you talked about savings. So are you all a supplier, or how do those savings actually get back to Tewksbury residents to help lower those utility bills that everyone is aware are painful right now? So
Yeah, absolutely. So, we don't have any sort of direct agreements with National Grid or Eversource. We sell into the wholesale market, who they then buy the energy from. So essentially, the energy prices on the wholesale market tend to dip around lunch, noon, as the solar in the state is producing electricity. So that's typically when we're charging, or overnight when the load is also low. So on the wholesale market, the energy is the cheapest at that point, and that's when we would charge our batteries. So we're paying, a low price for it. And then as the energy prices kind of go up towards either early in the morning or late in the evening, that's when we discharge the batteries back. So we're taking that cheaper electricity and putting it back onto the grid when the energy prices are up higher. And so it's taking those cost savings into the wholesale market. It's hard to kind of quantify it and how much it would be direct savings for residents of Tewksbury or Chelmsford or Andover. But it certainly is going to help lower that kind of peak price of energy in the wholesale market, which should be passed on to consumers through Eversource or National Grid.
Fair enough. Mr. Curran, I'll schedule a follow-up with you on that.
Okay.
Tewksbury is a very important part of the local energy grid.
Sure.
So I want to make sure we're having the appropriate discussions if something like this is going to move forward about how we can directly relate that back to Tewksbury residents. So thank you. That's all I have.
Mr. Ryder.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Tyler, thank you. Great presentation. You talk about the SME. What's the response time if you're an SME in this area?
That's, great question. So currently the construction time for this project, if all permits and interconnection go to plan, will be 2028. And so we won't know necessarily which vendor we're using for kind of the SME and operations and maintenance for the project for at least probably another year and a half or so. But it'll be part of the emergency response plan that we're building out, and we'll make sure to address that.
Ideally, what do you like to see? Is it 30 minutes? Is it 60 minutes? I mean, obviously, fire department's less than that. But again, they're trained to a certain point. They're there to take care of any, potential hazard outside the site, not to spread. Just looking at what's that turnaround time for your staff or, a qualified SME to be on site to assist the fire department.
Yeah, I don't have a specific kind of time. I don't know, Tyler, if you have. Yeah.
Tyler Klein with East Point Energy, VP of Project Development. So to answer your question, sir, with projects that we have that we're currently in execution phase with in Texas right now, it's kind of a 5 to 15 minute response on the phone to have a subject matter expert in conversation and communication with the fire department, and then kind of anywhere between 2 to 4 hours having an SME on site. That's kind of where we're structuring right now based off our current execution fleet.
Okay. Thank you. I had a question, but you talked about blasts. I mean, it's contained within the cabinet, so to speak. So the 28-foot wall is just purely for sound. It's not a blast wall. It's not. Okay. Just for the residents at home, what's the expected cost on a project like this? What the investment that your firm will be doing?
Yeah, so it's going to greatly depend on battery prices, which are in fluctuation a lot. We're currently modeling about $1 million plus per year in taxes to the locality.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, again, I'll follow up with Mr. Curran. I think, as the other board members talked about, cleanup of the site, it's a low impact to traffic-wise on our utilities. So I think, I'm sure some of the residents will have some concerns, as I would. But I think, you seem that you and your company have everything laid out to be able to address that and train our fire department properly. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ryder. Actually, everybody's asked my questions. Again, being last is always good. I only have one question, and that is, you have facilities in other places. Have you had any major incidences?
No. So again, the projects that are currently operating, we sold them post-development, so we weren't the people that actually went and built it or are operating it. But those projects have not had any incidents since they were installed. And then we do have a project down in Texas that's going to be turned on hopefully relatively soon. And so don't have any kind of operational data for that, but of the projects that we've developed, we haven't had any instances.
Well, okay, I like the idea. I think it's clean, and I think it's cleaning up a property that needs some cleaning up. So I have no further questions, and thank you for your presentation. But what I am going to do, this is not a public hearing, but if there's any residents that would like to say something or ask a question, please step up to the microphone. And I'm not seeing anybody, but you are going to publicize these public hearings, correct?
Correct, yeah. So the one in March 18th, abutters notices will be sent to residents within and businesses within a half mile. And then as a part of the Energy Facility Siting Board process, there will be another public hearing as well. I don't know necessarily what the radius is on that, but there will be another chance for questions and comments, as well as the chance for people to send in letters, emails, and kind of ask questions.
Are you going to advertise anything in the newspaper?
Yep,
Okay.
it has to be advertised in 2 newspapers, as well as, posted in the town hall and things like that. So.
All right, I have no further questions. Anybody else? Seeing none. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Okay, next on the agenda is Trefurry Road Race Triathlon. I'm sweating just thinking about it. Is there anyone here for that? Come right up, introduce yourself, name and address for the record.
Hi, I am Tricia Longele, part of Tri-Ferry and the Board of Directors.
Okay, and you're applying for a road race, and do you want to add anything before I turn it over to the board?
I don't think so. The road race starts in Wilmington. It's at the Silver Lake. And then we're just using Tewksbury streets for the bike ride.
Okay, board members, any questions?
Mr. Chairman, I just have one question. So using it for the bike ride?
Yes.
Is there going to be any details or anything like that out there?
There is not going to be any details. There will be one to two people at each corner, along with some cones at the corner.
Oh, so you can put cones out just to
Yes.
delineate?
Yeah, we usually, it's like anywhere, probably like 4 or 5 feet into the road, and then we have 2 people, one on each corner.
I was involved with the road race over in Wilmington with the chamber for years, so I understand what you're doing. I just wanted to make sure what to expect, if there's going to be something out there, if there's any concerns. It sounds like, looks like you're going mostly through low-impact residential areas.
Yes.
You're not going on 38, so.
No.
No, so, okay, that's all I need. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else?
That's it, Mr. Chair.
Okay, and I have no further questions. What is the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I'd make a motion to approve the Tri-Fury Road Race request.
Okay, motion made by Mr. Mackey.
Second.
Second by Mr. Ryder. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye as well. That's unanimous, 4-0. Thank you and best of luck to you.
Thank you.
Okay, next up, Murph's Fun Road Race. I'm sweating even more now. Everything's running.
You don't have the board representative for that.
Is there anyone here for Murph's? Come on up, introduce yourself for the record, name and address, and tell us what you're trying to do.
Hi, I'm Susan Galini. I live at 1 Oliver Street.
Okay?
Michael Galini, 1 Oliver Street.
Okay, and you want to tell us what your road race is about, or?
So we did this, we used to do this before. It's been like 10 years since we actually did the road race itself. But we did it probably 5, 6 years in a row. And it's in memory of my dad when he passed away. So all the money goes to the high school senior for a scholarship.
Okay. Board members, any questions?
I'm just happy to see this come back. I actually run across people every now and then that still have the shirts, and I wondered what happened to it. So I'm glad to see that you're back. It's for a great cause, and anything, raising things in memory of your dad, I think it's wonderful. So thank you.
Oh, I love that, thank you.
No questions?
I hope you come. It does, start and finish is at the Elks,
Yep.
and then, so when you finish, we have like a big cookout and everything back there, so
Nice.
everybody's welcome.
He's going to run.
Yeah.
It's easy because you don't run that far. We have all challenges. We'll have like 16 challenges that you have to do, so, like,
Okay.
easy challenges.
Yeah. Okay, what is the pleasure of the board?
I'll make a motion, Mr. Chair, to approve Murph's Fun Run on September 6, 2025 at 9 a.m.
I have a motion made by Mr. Ryder, second by Mr. Mackey. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye as well. Best of luck to you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, next up. Residents. Residents? No residents? Seeing none. Okay, new business. 686 Cultivation Revised HCA. Mr. Sadwick.
Good evening. For the record, Steve Sadwick, Assistant Town Manager. I had sent the board a memo regarding 686 Cultivation LLC's host community agreement. If the board remembers, we've had host community agreements that we did for the retail marijuana establishments, and they've all come back from the Cannabis Control Commission telling us that they weren't in compliance with their new regulations. So when the board approved 686 Cultivations HCA, that also has come back as not in compliance. So the owner of the property had asked that the board consider either revising the HCA as we've done in the past for the retail operations, or for a waiver of having an HCA. When you really look at what the town would receive from an HCA today, the whole process has really been gutted. There's no true local benefit anymore in an HCA, and that's why my recommendation was to have the board just approve the waiver request that was submitted.
Okay, board members, any questions?
Well, I just have one question. It sets a precedent of if we have somebody else come forward. How many of these could somebody potentially put up in the community?
For the, so with the retail, we limited that to 3 retail operations. When it comes to cultivation or manufacturing of cannabis products, there is no limitation on those.
This is a small one. And I have no problem waiving it for this, but if someone was to come forward and say, I want a large cultivation area, and we've set a precedence of waiving, I just don't know if there's, would that be a factor in that? Because we've done it before, or?
Well, that's a good question, but I think just asking that on the record right now and having it in the record that the consideration is given due to this being a small operation would help address any precedence requests in the future.
Yeah.
It's a good point, though.
All done?
Yep.
Mr. Mackey?
I have no questions and am in favor of the waiver for this HCA, for 686 cultivation.
Mr. Ryder?
No questions, Mr. Chair.
And I have no question. I'm also in favor of the waiver myself. So what is the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion to approve the host community agreement waiver form for 686 cultivation.
I'll second.
I have a motion made by Mr. Mackey, seconded by Mr. Ryder. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And chair votes aye as well. Any opposed? Hearing none, that's a 4-0 vote. That's unanimous.
Thank you.
Okay. Next up is approval Lowell 5 cent savings bank donation. Board members, we'll start with Mr. Kratman.
I have no comments on it.
Okay, Mr. Mackey.
My only comment is to make sure that we reach out, Mr. Curran, and send a thank you letter. Otherwise,
Sure.
I will be happy to accept this with gratitude.
Okay, Mr. Ryder.
Yeah, I will agree with my colleagues. Yes, I have no issue, and also just make sure that letter, we thank them.
Okay, what is the pleasure of the board? I have no
Mr. Chair, I'll
question.
make a motion to accept the donation for $2,000 from Low 5.
Second.
I have a motion made by Mr. Ryder, second by Mr. Mackey. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye as well. Any opposed? Hearing none. Unanimous. Okay, next up. Planning Board Chairman discussion, MBTA zoning article. Mr. Johnson, he's in the room. Just introduce yourself for the record and
All right, Steve Johnson, Planning Board Chair. Need more than that, or is that good enough? Is that good enough? All right.
hey, the floor is yours.
Thank you. All right, I appreciate you guys having me in. Kind of hoping that, after we have a conversation tonight, that maybe, I doubt we'll all agree. I mean, I don't have a magic wand or, a lamp with 3 wishes, but if we can at least get on the same page as far as what's fact, what's accurate, what's the law, I think it will help move this whole process eventually to an end point, but at least get us somewhere as it is for the planning board considering the zoning article that would be upcoming, that we'll have a public hearing on. Even at our last hearing when we proposed it, it's just a lot of confusion, and I just think it's important that we try to get everybody at least kind of on the same page. Ultimately, I think that's the benefit to the residents, most importantly. I mean, it's going to help my board for what we have to do, but, there's a lot more involved, so I think it's important. Well, with that said, just a couple of things, if any of the board members disagrees with something that I say is being, either inaccurate or not legally sound, I wish, I'd ask you to please say so, so we can kind of hash that out. Even maybe more importantly, if you agree that what I'm saying is accurate and legally sound and you still disagree, I really think we have to have that conversation, because that's just going to put us back in the same place, which is we're not dealing with facts and we're not presenting facts for people to make informed decisions. We have to at least agree on the things that are true, okay? And then just the legality part of it, and I don't mean this as a wisecrack in any way, but, I know no one on the board is an attorney. So if you think that I'm saying something and it's not, you're not sure that it's really legally sound, I really ask that you check me against town council. I'm not trying to trick anybody or anything like that. I absolutely like to be checked, for any of that if you think it's not, accurate. But, so, starting off with the SJC's decision. So, they basically concluded the law is constitutional, enforceable, and a mandate and not discretionary. The Attorney General has the power to enforce it, including both equitable and injunctive relief, and the state is not limited to those 13 grants that were listed. They can go after other things as a penalty. That's the SJC's decision. Now, at this point, I know the next, the item after this is going to be about the auditor issue that's come up. So I think it's important just, within this to at least address that a little bit here, and I'll discuss a little bit more in a second, but it also needs to be understood that the auditor's determination is not in and of itself enforceable by itself. It's simply a determination. That determination can be used as evidence if you go to the Superior Court to request an exemption. Until you get that exemption, you are still required to adhere to the law. Until you get that, if you seek it. Prior to that, you're in jeopardy and you have to comply, and all the possible penalties are all still enforced. It doesn't, her determination does not freeze that process in any way. It just gives you a potential option of something to pursue, but not in and of itself does it exempt anyone from anything at the present time. It's important that we make that distinction. I think even some of the reporting has jumbled that up a little bit. That determination is just that, a determination. But connected to that, and part of my point here, you can't begin to discuss the auditor's determination or the Massachusetts mandate law if you don't first accept that this is a mandate. Like, it's not optional. You can't even embrace the auditor's decision. As a matter of fact, if you try to file with the Superior Court, you must plead that it is in fact a mandate. So we can't have that conversation anymore that it's not a mandate. It is in fact a mandate. Even without doing anything with the auditor, it was already that. But you cannot try to embrace that path if you don't at least embrace the fact that this is a mandate. As far as any of the discussion about, constitutionality, there is no higher court in Massachusetts than the Supreme Judicial Court. They have said it is constitutional. There is no path to challenge that. The only other option you would have to go to federal court. There is no basis for a federal court lawsuit. There is no due process problem here that you could try and make an argument for. The Massachusetts state constitution is the only place, even the argument about home rule, that doesn't derive out of the U.S. Constitution. That's coming out of the Massachusetts state constitution. And if the Massachusetts Supreme Judicial Court just told you that this is constitutional, that means that it is not in violation of that law. So we have to start there. I mean, I guess, I'll stop there. If anybody disagrees with anything I said, please point it out now, because the rest of it's sort of pointless if we can't at least get past that.
Well, I have a couple of comments, Art. I understand that it's a law. I agree with you on that point. But I don't think they followed all the procedures that they're supposed to do to cover this law. We've talked about problems that have done. They were supposed to do a small business study.
Before you go too far on that again, just because I know you made that comment at the last meeting, I would have skipped it here, but only because you're bringing it up again. The law you're talking about, the one that deals with promulgating the regulations, requires a small business study. The small business study is like global, small business. It's not specific to each individual city and town. Because if you think that out, every time there was a state law, you'd have to come up with 351 individual reports every time, or in this case, over 170 reports. That's just small business in general. But more importantly, and I kind of would have touched on this in a second, that report is required to promulgate the final regulations. We are not operating under the final regulations right now. We're operating under the emergency regulations, which do not require that study to be filed yet. It can only be filed as part of the process of getting to the final rules between now and July.
And part of our argument is this really an emergency. And I know the governor declared this an emergency, but what really makes this an emergency? And there's been other municipalities that have filed lawsuits stating they don't believe this to be an emergency.
Which is fine, but again, that brings you back to you have to sue to do that, spend the money to fight it.
And other communities have already done that.
But to me, and that's part of what we're going to get to, I think, in a minute, is that then we got to tell everybody, what are we spending for what expected outcome? Because I think that matters to folks, that, when we say that there's no penalties or costs or whatever to not complying, that's a cost.
I don't think
I'm saying that, well, when we talk about that, at first it was just, we were just worried about the grants we don't get. For that, that's not the case anymore. But this is a cost you have to spend to try to defend in court, and then measure that against what is the success likelihood, spending that money to get what result. I mean, Milton just spent basically $300,000 to literally have their heads handed to them. I mean, they really got nothing out of $300,000 with the exception of a little more time. Because all they did was put the emergency rules in place, and they're just going to promulgate the same rules again. You spent $300,000 to get what? So that's what, when we're talking about, what's required, that's one of the examples what I mean when I'm saying, it sounds right when you say they're not doing what they're supposed to do, but technically they're not supposed to do that yet. yet. That's not what we're working under. We have to deal with the fact that we're currently under the emergency
I
rules.
think it's a big concern, and it's my concern, how something like this would affect the small businesses in this community.
And I would not disagree with that. But I'm saying don't comply because the state hasn't complied by doing the study yet. They don't actually have to do it yet. But we do have to comply because right now, unless someone wins a challenge against the emergency regulations, which, by the way, if you try to fight them, by the time you're done and spent your money, the final rules are going to be in place. So what did you do?
My
to me-
argument is that the residents get to vote in this community. I can
We'll get there,
understand.
too,
I know,
because
but
that's a good one.
I'm already there, but the residents get to vote in this community, and when they go, and you get 90% of the community going out saying that, I understand that they put this law in place, I don't think it's a good law, I don't think it benefits our community, I don't think it's something that's going to help it. Do you have anybody on your board that says that this is something that's good for Tewksbury?
So without speaking for the members of my board, but knowing what they've said,
Yeah.
so I'm going to be just,
Yeah.
it's a little, in between, but I believe even those who voted to put the article before town meeting were pretty clear in that they don't like it. Full disclosure, I don't like it.
Yeah.
I do not think this is done well. I do think it is a cautionary tale that we really need to pay attention to, because this is what happens when the state is left to deal with an issue with a sledgehammer, when cities and towns don't deal with it with a scalpel. You get this thing comes down in your head like this, and it is not specific enough. It does not take into account enough.
Can I make a comment to that?
Yeah.
The town of Tewksbury, when you say a scalpel, the town of Tewksbury has done their part with the number of apartments that have been built in this community.
Which is where I would say that's what I mean, where you end up with this in a global problem.
But the residents,
Global problem.
the residents that are watching this tonight, the town
I
of
would not
Tewksbury
disagree.
has done their part.
Which is why you wish it could have been done better.
The governor and the state has not taken into consideration what cities and towns have done.
And I do not disagree.
And-
I
but
do not
again-
disagree, because that's what I'm saying. I agree with the flawed nature of the law. But I would also challenge you with this thought. Could you not name any number of laws that you think are flawed, but you don't get to choose to just not follow them because you think they're flawed? You can try and change them, you can try and make them better, but that doesn't make them not laws. They are in fact laws and must be followed unless you have some way of not doing so. And not just not doing it is not really, a basis for that.
Aren't there a number of federal laws that were just put in place that our Attorney General's filing suit against the feds to not follow?
Yeah, to try and not follow.
Yeah, so.
Well, you can
so we're-
try to
so
not
we're-
follow,
so
but
we're-
that's not what I'm
So that's
saying.
all we're trying to do.
But that's the difference. But what I'm saying is that doesn't mean you're not required to follow them. So, for example, we had the conversation, I think, at the last meeting, where you suggested there were bills filed that might change this. Well, in the meantime, you can't not follow the law because some bills were filed. There were over 8,000 bills filed in the last two-year legislative session. A couple of hundred passed. Any bill that's filed can sit there for 2 years. For an example, if I were to tell you that there's been a bill filed to eliminate property taxes, is anyone here going to advocate for the next 2 years that residents stop paying their property taxes until that bill is dealt with?
We're talking apples and oranges.
That's not apples and oranges, because who's cutting that off? Who's cutting that off then?
That's extreme. That's extreme.
But that's the slippery slope of the
What
argument.
we're talking about here is a zoning requirement that the state of...
No, a law.
No, wait a second.
A law.
This started with a zoning requirement. The state of Massachusetts required cities and towns to have their body, the voters in this town...
Through a law.
...to make a decision whether they adopt. If the state of Massachusetts had the authority to come in and implement this, why did they make cities and towns go back to their town meeting and vote it in? But zoning historically has been done at town meeting.
If you want an answer, I can give it to you.
But that's where it's been done.
But I can give you the answer. One, you have to still remember, it's a law. The fact that they
I'm not
gave you
saying
the
it's not a law.
the fact that they gave cities and towns, and I would agree, very little leeway, but they did tell those cities and towns, have your meetings, talk to your residents, decide where to put it and how to put it in your town in compliance with the law. We did that. We sat down with residents many, many times and came up with a zone we thought was palatable, at best we could, of the options we had in compliance with the law. I mean, I think you could probably name some other laws where the state has given the town not a lot of room, but a little room to make some decisions on their own. Now, what I'll say to you is that the state does have that power, and if we keep denying compliance, if we do not find some other way around this, that's exactly what's going to happen. Another thing I would have gotten to, but several of those things that can happen, especially coming through the AG if they happen to sue us, the things the AG can do, you guys have brought at least one, which was the special master. Special master comes in here and decides to put this zone someplace. They don't care what we think. They don't have to ask us. They don't have to care. No, and I'm not, and you guys, I swear to God, I am not trying to be scary or anything else, but people have to understand that special master could come in here and put it anywhere. That means the zones we decided we did not want for sure, Ames Pond, they can come in and just do it. We can't stop them. It's not fear-mongering. It's fact that it could happen, and you have to know that.
That property has to be up for sale.
It is fear-mongering, though.
So that property has to be up for sale. They can't, I don't want to hear that they could
What do you mean?
possibly...
We could have made the zone there.
But is the governor going to come in and take everything by eminent
It's not
domain? and put the
MLD.
thing
All
in?
they're doing is putting the zone in, is what I'm saying. The special master would come in and say, not down at Heathbrook, Ames Pond, or the golf course, or whatever those other zones were, or someone they make up all by themselves.
To me, it sounds like fear factor.
I do need to interject for a
So
moment.
I'd ask you this, is what I just said inaccurate? Could it happen? If they send a special master, is what I just said a possibility?
They could put something in. Do I think that...
That's all they want people to know, though.
But the whole thing is, this is what it comes down to, and you can, I'll listen to you, but are you trying to convince me to vote for something to overrule the residents of Tewksbury? Because that's where it comes down to.
First of all,
we're going to go to town meeting, they're going to vote.
So here's one of
So
the
they're gonna
arguments
vote.
I would make, and this is where I think some folks...
Speaking at a time.
This is where I think some of the folks maybe get confused at home as well. The select board is the executive body for the town, okay? So you guys are the governor or the mayor, okay? With all due respect, you shouldn't be telling anybody anything anyways, just like you don't want the governor of the state to tell us anything in this case. The legislative body, for good or for ill, is town meeting. Town meeting is a thing. It's people, it's us, and it's a lot of other residents, but ultimately it's still a thing. And that thing is the legislative body of the town, which brings me back to the original point about the article, which is the argument against not putting it on for town meeting, to me, is denying the legislative body of the town the option to weigh in. I am fine if the town comes back and says, tell the state go pound sand. We'll take the consequences, whatever they are, as long as they understand what those consequences could be, and I'm saying could be. I can't any more than you tell you what's going to happen, but I can tell you what can happen, and you need to weigh it in to make an informed decision when you're at town meeting. So that's what I'm trying to do, but more importantly, give the town meeting that option by putting that article forward. The advocacy for not putting the article on, I just don't get, because even if you say they've already weighed in, one, if you were there, and I know everybody here was, 90% more of that conversation was about, why do we need to deal with this? That Milton lawsuit is going on. We don't even know if we'll have to do this. Let's let that play out and see what answers we got. We got those answers. It is valid. It is enforceable. We can lose more than the grants that were included. You got those answers. That's different. So the next one's kind of a little technical, but you can't possibly have considered this last time because part of the SJC's decision struck down the regulations in place at the time. They may have basically put the same thing in place, but you did not consider the current regulations. So you couldn't have done that at last town meeting. You can only be doing that now because they just came into existence in February.
So I am going to interject at this point. I wanted you to finish that train of thought, but I need to address something that was mentioned. Eminent domain was mentioned again, and after last town meeting, I had a number of discussions because people were told that if this passed, they were going to lose their property to eminent domain, which was wholly false. So when we have to be careful when we're talking about fear-mongering, when we throw around terms like eminent domain, this is not the state coming in and building it. Again, I've been very clear. I hate this law, I hate the government overreach, and I think it's complete fabrication that this is an emergency. However, it is a law. And if we're gonna say big scary words and fearmonger and say eminent domain, we need to be clear that eminent domain is not an option. The special master may come in and put it up at Ames Pond or put it next to Emerald Court. That is an option if, that's a big if a special master happens, they can put it wherever they want. They're not taking the land, they're not developing the land. It is to create the zone. As Mr. Ryder said, this is all about creating that zoning overlay. So I just want to be very clear, whenever we say eminent domain, because I had to have a lot of very difficult discussions with people that were fearful before and after last town meeting, because they were told that they were going to lose their homes if this passed, which was a fallacy.
And that's the point, the reason I brought it up, is because I talked to those same residents saying, if you didn't vote for it to go in this location, it's going to come to your location. And so they scared them into voting for a place that they didn't want.
That's a completely different topic. We're talking about.
No, but I'm just telling you, that's what happened at town meeting.
If you want to make that point, you can make that point.
Now, I know I had some of that conversation, but in my case, again, and I'm doing it here again tonight, I'm not telling you it's going to happen. I couldn't possibly tell you it's going to happen, but I can tell you that if a special master comes in, the special master can do whatever they want. That is a possibility that non-compliance brings about. That's all. Just something to be aware of. Along the same lines, within the AG's power is injunctive relief. What is that? You know, ultimately, the one that you really got to worry about, and it was in her lawsuit and the SJC approved, is basically you could have the zoning bylaws suspended and unenforceable by the town, most specifically regarding density. And again, it's not meant to be fearful, but there's a picture to understand what that means. If the zoning bylaws are non-enforceable, a developer could go anywhere and build something with no density restrictions and any other zoning bylaw restrictions that they suspend. That's dangerous.
I don't know if, I mean, realistically, Mr. Johnson, do you, that comment right there, that is telling, that's the same thing that residents heard the last time. If you don't approve it there,
I understand,
they're going to come to your location. But what you just, now let me finish, please. What you just stated is somebody can come in and remove the density requirement.
So just so we're clear, I did not say that.
No, I'm just
this
telling you.
SJC did.
But what you just said, you're repeating, and that is not going to happen. That is not going to happen.
SJC, hold on.
If that happens,
that's an inaccurate statement.
One at a time.
What you're going to have every state rep, I'll tell you, I'll have every state rep here when that happens, and I'm going to put them in front of here, and we're going to do it at town hall or the high school, and I'm going to bring every person there and look at those reps and say, this is what you're going to allow to Tewksbury. And you know what's going to happen? The same thing that happened the last time when they tried to take the firefighter grant. What happened? They got pressure and they caved. They caved. Oh, we're going to give it to you this time because they didn't want to deal with the ramifications.
Okay, so to back up to your first point, though.
You talked about at your meeting. You wanted residents to hear facts. That's not a fact. That's a fear.
Actually, no, it is. That's the difference and the problem.
Depicted, it's a fear.
It's not a fear.
They're going to come in and remove the zoning.
So let me ask you a different way.
Not going to happen.
Let me ask you a different way then. In the SJC's decision, did they grant and uphold the Attorney General, who in her suit requested injunctive relief?
She did.
Okay.
Yes, they did.
So the SJC, not me, said that the Attorney General can suspend the enforcement of local zoning laws, specifically as to density. Nothing I said was my opinion. Everything I said is fact coming from the SJC's decision. When you deny the fact that the SJC is the one saying it, which means it is legally enforceable, you're making an opinion argument. I'm simply stating the facts of the case and the decision made by the SJC, which is 1,000% enforceable. Am I saying it will happen? No, but you need to know it can so that you weigh
I
it.
understand that, but we can't say what ifs.
Of course you can.
We can't. Mr. Johnson, you cannot sit there and tell
Well, let me ask you it this way, then.
They're going to remove the
Fair
zoning.
enough, fair enough.
Remove the density. We can't
Fair
say
enough,
that.
fair enough.
You know,
I can
that-
tell you it can happen,
It could happen.
but fair
to
enough.
say- But someone
So,
at home,
One at a
Middleborough.
time.
someone at home is going to hear that, and they're going to hear the same thing that happened the last time. If they don't do it there, it's going to come here. But now they can remove the zoning. That's all people want to hear. And again, this
Why
board has
can't they hear
never-
that? Because it's true.
I understand it's true, but it's not going to happen.
But you know this.
Because, no, I can't say that, but I'll tell you, you know who's going to have to deal with this? The elected officials, our state representatives and our senators, because they're going to be in front of the residents at a special town meeting when this hits.
Separate issue, though. Separate issue. Holding your state representatives accountable is not the same as saying that you can deny the law or a court decision that can be implemented. Those are two different things. You are free to hold them accountable all you want. You could hold them accountable regardless. That's fine. But the fact of the matter is, if I'm telling you, in this case, something that can happen, all I'm saying is it can. Use it in your determination. It doesn't mean you must use it, but you should at least be aware of it as a potential consequence, which would, if you use Middleborough as an example, all right? They're a little further along in this process than we are. I mean, I thank the board for not having the town manager not send in the compliance letter, or we'd be in the same position, only without the letter from the auditor at this point. But Middleborough had their funding affected, their discretionary funding, including education funding. I agree with you that that's crap. I don't like it. I'm just telling you, it's happening. And we would be in the same boat if we were out of compliance right now. Luckily, we have some time. We also have the benefit, potentially, of letting Middleborough carry some of the water here in terms of being a little ahead in the process. They've already filed a suit. If you find out that in filing their suit, they can get some sort of stay on any kind of implementation or penalty or whatever from the courts, great. Get us going on the same process, get the same relief. Just remember, that's not, you can't piggyback off Middleborough.
No, it's a separate.
You must file your own, you must get your own exemption, so they could give one to Middleborough and not us if they don't like our information. But that's a separate issue. But if that, you can get a stay, fantastic, I'm all for it. Great, go ahead. But what I'm saying is, unless you do, you will have to comply, because we will have compliance requirements, and if you don't, you'll have what happened to Middleborough, which is discretionary funding in jeopardy. Education, public safety. They backed off last time. I'll honestly tell you, I think they had to back off because they lost the regulations. They didn't have them anymore. They were taken away. They had to put new ones in. So it would have been really hard for them to enforce the regulations that didn't count. So they had to kind of give that funding back. I think Middleborough's giving you a heads up that they don't feel that way now. And I believe we've been informed by the state when we received the last public funding, the Fire Department funding, I apologize. Along with that was a gentle reminder that going forward, compliance with the law would be considered. Again, I don't know if they will or not. Middleborough's giving you a pretty good indication that it sounds like they might. Consider it. Don't. I'm not telling you got to take it into, take it into decision-making, but it doesn't mean you have to make your decision based only on that. Just give everybody the information, accurate and true. This can happen. Consider it. Make your decision. You don't like it still, make your decision. That's fine. But you have to understand, Middleborough is losing millions right now, as of now. We'll see what happens, but we're in the same boat. We get millions of dollars in discretionary funding for public safety, for education. I think it's crazy that they take education. I agree with that, but it's happening, at least right now, that it could be, are the residents in a position to fill those gaps if that happens? We have infrastructure projects that we want to deal with. There are programs in which we get better rates, which means residents pay less to pay off that work. If we can't get those because we're denied them because we're non-compliant, You're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars residents have to go into pocket to pay for things we have to do. They need to know that to weigh it, not because it should be fearful, it's informational. You should be as informed as possible when you make your decisions. That's all I'm saying here, is like, give them everything. Make them as aware of everything as you can, and let them make their decision. If they make their decision not to go forward with compliance, I'm on board. That's fine. I will do as the residents vote to do. That's fine. You know what I mean? That's town meetings right. We follow what they do, but they got to know what they're doing when they do it.
That's basically what you're trying to do, is inform the residents in your presentation. Correct?
Yeah.
Because my opinion is, you know, the only way to, this is a bad law. I agree with everybody that it's a bad law. There's 351 cities and towns, 177 got whacked with this law. That's unfair. People out west, their state representatives voted for this law, did not affect them. And I'm going to go back to the 1772. King George imposed a tax on tea. Well, that didn't work out too well for King George now, did it? You know, so the way I'm saying it is, the only way to change this law is to disobey it.
So, while I respect your opinion, I would say this. We're making sort of comments that are along the lines of taxation without representation. And we've done this a couple of times, I think what's happened at this last meeting, while in the middle of complaining about our representatives. That before somebody starts dumping tea or Treehouse beer in Ames Pond, that's not the case here. This bill was passed at like 90-some-odd%. That's not all Western Mass that voted for that. So, and if it was so bad, how has it not been amended? How has there not been support for any of those changes?
Mr. Chairman, it has been amended. The bill that originally was passed is not anything like what's being enforced now.
I apologize. I mean for the complaints we're having now.
Just mentioned that's what,
Right.
when they voted on it, they voted on something completely different.
Which is fine, but
And the state auditor voted on this, and, you know, and now she is someone who's bringing up a point. She seems to be the only one up at the state that's doing her job, bringing up about the funding, talking about the enforcement, doing the things. I understand this auditor cannot overrule the governor or the attorney general or the legislature, but she brought up points of the funding. And this is where it really comes down to. When we're talking about the cost of this, you know, we're talking about a major development, and then you're talking about infrastructure, and the state is not coming forward with any funds for this.
Again, that would be part of your argument.
And the developer is limited to what they have to do. So you're going to build a major development, you're going to put it on, the developer doesn't have to.
I apologize. Could you say that again? Because I'm not sure if I understood what you meant.
If you put a developer in there,
Yep.
they, according to this law, there's certain requirements that they must do. But we can't ask for the extra of water or improvements or any other things that may be attached to something. If it came through your board,
We actually would have the power to request,
special things.
well, not special things, but that they, if there are impacts, they'd have to address them.
With the MBTA things, we could be overruled.
By
Because
whom?
we're voting by right. We're giving this land up by right.
Again, we're being a little inaccurate in that. Within the law as it stands, you still have the ability to request infrastructure, not request, insist on infrastructure be dealt with by the developer. If the developer has just pick whatever size project you're talking about. And, you know, again, when we talked about it before, 1,200 units isn't what you're getting with what's there. You can't build 1,200 units unless you level the entire zone, meaning market basket, all that stuff. So it's something in between. I don't know what it is, but you're not getting rid of all of that down there. And even if you do, whatever infrastructure problems there are, you have to deduct whatever's leaving first before you worry about it. But regardless of that, the board, my board in this case, can insist on infrastructure be addressed. If it is not addressed, the developer would either have to reduce the size of their project so that it's not making the impacts that they can't address. Or if they refuse.
If the state tells them that they don't have to do it?
Okay, now, someone here said we can't do hypotheticals. That is not the case with the law right now. But that's not the case with the law now. There is no mechanism in the law as it stands to overrule that decision. If the board, in that case my board, denied the project because you cannot address the infrastructure impacts because they are too impactful, or you can't reduce the project so you don't impact it to where it's a problem or whatever, we can deny the project on that basis, and that should be defendable under the law if we had the developer appeal it, just like any of our other decisions that we make currently under the zoning bylaws. Unless we do it wrong, we should be able to defend ourselves should it go to court. We hope not to do that, and I hate when we have to, but as long as we don't screw up in how we go about denying it or the reasons we use, then it is enforceable against them.
Here's one of my arguments, and I've been to a million of your planning board meetings. When something gets developed, it gets developed on this parcel. And then you take it into consideration, and I've sat at every one of those ones where it says small to negligible traffic impacts from this one parcel. And then the one next to it gets developed, and that's small. It doesn't get combined together, it's each parcel. And small to, not really going to impact, not going to impact, not going to impact, not going to impact. I've sat through a million different planning board meetings over the last decade where let me finish.
I understand.
Where everyone comes in and they all say, this isn't going to impact traffic. When it's done, we can't get 3 cars through the intersection as it is.
Okay.
So that's
slightly different argument you're making, though.
Adding that much, that's a concern. Yeah.
Finish your presentation.
Okay.
So we can move along.
All right.
You're here to inform the residents. That was your opportunity.
Okay, so bringing it back to the warrant article itself, it is my suggestion, and the part that I was trying to make sure that we at least got to, is that I think that bringing the article back to town meeting so that they can make their decision shouldn't really be an argument anymore, that anyone is coming out against that. Just from our point of view, for the reasons that we're confused. I mean, I think that the article needs to at least go back, if nothing else, to give us parallel protection opportunities while you guys deal in a few minutes, I think, with the auditor possibility as another path. As you see how Middleborough perhaps gives us a little bit of a heads up of what our possible likelihood is. If we find, by the time we get a couple of months from now to town meeting, and you guys have gotten enough information to feel comfortable that we're safe from the potential consequences that we discussed tonight, withdraw the article. I'll do it myself, that's fine. As long as we're safe, then that's fine, I don't care. Or in the alternative, if we're not sure at that point, we have the opportunity still, because it's at least on the town warrant, to look at it and say, what do we do? Should we worry about the compliance problems if we don't comply and the penalties or costs? Do we pass it because of that? Do we not? Do we pass it and do what Bill Rickard did? Freeze it until, if we're filing a case at that point, our case is resolved. Or, if we're attaching it to something else, you guys decide, whatever, I don't care. It doesn't matter to me. But, Bill Rickard did that with theirs. They froze it, trying to wait out the Milton decision. So that's fine. You can do something similar. But if we cut this thing off with an argument of, they already made their opinions known a year ago, nothing's changed. I don't think that's true, that's my opinion. But I think we have to give the legislative body in the town that option, as well as the protection opportunity that it provides, to give us a few more months to get more information even than we have now as to where we are and what we should do by the time we get to May, at least, and then decide then. But if we cut it off and we don't at least move it forward, because of the rhetoric or whatever, that, I think that's a dangerous proposition for us, and I think it's unfair to deny in this case, the legislative body in town, the opportunity to give their voice. I mean, we've done it before. There's a process for bringing something back when it's already been heard. We did it with the zoning bylaw. It was defeated. We brought it back a year later. New information, new perspective. We didn't just bring it back, it then passed. Only 1 year later, there was a different outcome. So I'm not saying there'll be a different outcome here, but the possibility is there for that different outcome because there is new information. Maybe the outcome's the same, but at least then you know. When you go forward or when residents come in here flipping out, if we do lose any kind of funding, everybody should feel comfortable to say, hey, this was the decision of the town. We knew what we were doing. We knew what that might mean. Now we got to deal with it. Like, everybody made their decision. Let's, all be on one team here, and then we deal with whatever comes after that, if that's what we decide. But at least we decided it. We didn't leave it up in the ether.
This is going to town meeting, correct?
Well, no, not yet. It requires a positive vote from the planning board to go to town meeting because it's coming up within 2 years. And part of the reason for this conversation was at my own board, much of the information we discussed here tonight was in question as to whether or not it was even factual or not, which I think influenced how that vote went. And by the time we come around to holding our public hearing, if that kind of rhetoric remains, I can't tell you what the outcome of that vote is going to be. It could be the same, it could be different. But I think if we can't stop that rhetoric before that happens, we're going to put ourselves in a very bad position. A normal warrant article just goes. We could say, we like it, we don't like it, it doesn't matter, it still goes to town meeting. This is a unique situation, and one of the reasons why I wanted to come in here to have this discussion, to try and at least remove some of that confusion and some of that rhetoric so that we can get to the main issue, which is give our legislative body an opportunity, give the residents through that legislative body the opportunity to voice their opinion, even if it's the same opinion, that's fine. But let's not cut off that option just in case, one, we need it, but more importantly, I just think it's correct to give that option. So that's really a lot of why I brought it in, because there is a positive vote necessary when this article comes up for its public hearing. It's a little different, so that's one of the reasons why I wanted to do this, because I think it really would benefit my board and in turn benefit the residents for this discussion to have happened, and for some of this back and forth to have gone on, because I think it's important.
Okay.
All right. Anything else for me?
I have nothing else.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it, guys.
Thank you.
I appreciate you coming in and engaging in this discourse, because there has not been a lot of opportunity for public discourse on this. And some people agree, some people disagree. I think this is one of the most important parts about especially local politics and being able to have discussions so people can make informed decisions. So I really appreciate the work you put in and coming in here.
I appreciate the opportunity to come in and talk to you guys. Thanks.
What's next? State auditor letter. Didn't we already go through that with Mr. Ryder?
Yep, thank you, Mr. Chair. I would, was touched on in the last session a little bit, but as you've seen, the state auditor has made a determination under the Division of Local Mandates that it was declared an unfunded mandate. And I did speak with the auditor's office, and we have the direction on how we need to apply for that. I think we should request the ruling for our community. It was, it is a statewide statement, but after speaking with the chief of operations director, they stated it would be best if we filed our own. And I could forward to Mr. Curran the email from the auditor's office. But I think, again, you know, as stated by many people on multiple boards. This is a bad law, we don't like it. This is another tool in Tewksbury's toolbox that we could have to potentially get a stay, defeat, defer, get a exemption, but I think this is an opportunity that this board should take, and I'll make a motion, obviously, after everyone else has the ability to speak on it, but I think this is something that's important. I think we owe it to our residents. Again, my opinion, I don't think this board has given anyone, has sat here and give misinformation to anyone. I mean, that has not been the case. Me personally, when I talk to people, I give them the facts. There's no misinformation. They all are well aware that we could lose grants. There's discretionary funding, if you want to call it that, and they are all aware of that. But again, I think the residents understand that, and they're going to make the decision. They're the ones that are going to make the decision. So I think this is in the best interest of this community to move this so we can get a determination from the auditor, and if it's that we have to file suit, I think it's worth filing suit because our residents, we're elected by the residents, and the residents spoke loud and clear. And if we get 100 people that say, well, I was waiting on the Milton case, that's fine. The numbers are still there. They don't want this in their town. I continue to hear from residents, and I'm not going to beat this drum, they all said, I moved from Tewksbury to Tewksbury from Everett, from Somerville, from East Boston, from Lowell. I'm a perfect example. I moved out of a big city because I did not want to live in a city. I did not want to deal with this. I grew up with this. I moved to a community that I had an opportunity to meet people. No, majority of the people in this town have an impact on their kids, and that's what this community needs to stay. A small community. It's a large size, 31,000 people in this town, but it's a small community. And I think we need to fight as long as we possibly can for the residents in the town. So I think we need to support this. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Did you make a motion?
Yeah,
Well, I did. I said I would make a motion.
Yeah.
I would make a motion after everyone spoke. So I didn't want to make a motion first, but I can if you'd like. Mr. Chair, if you think that's appropriate.
I would prefer time to comment.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Thank you. So I want to say I agree. I've been, from the beginning, I've said, give me a path to victory. Choosing not to comply with the law wasn't something I was comfortable with. We've beaten the horse of it's a bad law. I believe we are all in agreement. I won't speak for anybody. But I've said since the beginning, show me a potential, show me an avenue that we could potentially get to a victory. And I've had discussions with Mr. Curran. I've had a number of phone calls. I spoke with town council. I think that this is absolutely something we need to do. We need to get the determination letter. When we get the determination letter, we also need to reach out and see when the financial analysis is going to be out, because that's the missing piece. As of right now, I can't see anybody being successful because they have the letter of determination was made, but not the math behind it, which is something that's going to be very important. And if that comes out soon, then I would say, once I'm going to assume that the motion is going to pass us in the letter, which I wholeheartedly agree with. Once we get that letter, we need that information, financial information, to back it up on what that unfunded mandate impact is. Because at that point, I believe we need to, as quickly as possible, have the town file with the Superior Court and look for a stay while we go through that process. Again, to be clear, as we just spent a lot of time discussing, that doesn't mean we're going to get it. It doesn't mean there's not going to be impacts. It doesn't mean that we don't have to comply if we don't like the answer, but it gives us an opportunity. And if we have a potential path to victory, I'm 110% in. I want to make sure we cross our T's, dot our I's, get that all in place. So while I am 110% in favor of sending the letter, there is a lot more to it than that, and I want to make sure that we're diligent on those activities. And again, get that in front of the Superior Court as soon as possible so we can hopefully get a determination as soon as possible. I believe Mr. Feely has joined. So Kevin, how you doing?
Hi, Kevin.
Hello, everyone.
Did I miss anything, misrepresent anything in there? I know we had a few discussions, I had a few discussions with Mr. Curran, so, okay. And
No, if I could, Mr. Chairman, could I just add one thing to what Mr. Mackey said?
please, oops, sorry.
I can't hear him.
Yes, you can add one thing.
The other piece to just consider, that when we, if the board votes to submit the determination letter to the auditor, and we do not have an answer yet on the financial impact piece, one consideration which I would suspect that we would discuss in more detail in an executive session would be when we file in Superior Court seeking a preliminary injunction to maintain the status quo until such time as the auditor is able to come out with what I imagine is a very complicated calculation when considering what that figure would be. So that would just be I would assume, again, at some point in executive session to discuss strategy, but that would be one more interim a piece of the puzzle.
Thank you. And just to elaborate slightly more, as was mentioned, we're seeing with Westboro their loss of funding. And again, I'm glad we sent the letter. I am going to say, I think we should follow what some others have done and continue down the process, not try to block the article. Hopefully it passes, we freeze it, we file suit, we win the suit, we repeal it. That way there is limited to no exposure for the town financially losing funds. That would be my personal recommendation, but I will leave it to those who are far more adept at the law than I am, if that is feasible. So that's all I have. Again, highly support sending the letter. Definitely want to see the financial analysis on the back end, and I think we need to, as soon as we have that financial analysis in hand, go to Superior Court and make sure that that includes requesting a stay. Thank you.
Mr. Kratman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Listen, we're beating this thing up. I agree with James that, that we're arguing about if this is a law. It's a law. It is. My perspective is, I understand that, my thing is that the residents come forward, and yes, I've heard this 100 times, that the reason the residents didn't vote it down is because of Milton. Not the residents that I've spoken to. Residents that I've spoken to voted it because they don't want that much housing and jammed down that location. The fact that it came back and they put in, without doing any other meetings about another zone or anything, they just voted, we're going back to the same exact place again. I would like to have had some conversation. Multiple communities have voted to try to abide by it, but they're playing the game. They're trying to find locations where it won't be built. And they're submitting plans, which are all being kicked out, but they're submitting plans that may not be developed, where you're not going to tear that down because the owner's not going to sell it or whatever it may be, but they're trying to be in compliance knowing that it probably won't be built. And that's what happens when you go to different developments. My concern is, this gets voted in down there, it's going to be built. There's too much money in housing to tear down. There's a lot of land down there. Yeah, there's a gas station. Yeah, there's we know already that there's going to be something built on the John Ryan site. We know that the building next door, the owner doubled, like I think all the places down there, all the businesses are empty. So that business, you never see anybody in there anymore. You see all the other places that are down there, they're too valuable. How many places on 38 was there an auto repair shop? Now there's 15 houses. There's too much money in land to put something on there. And if there's a small shop that's not making that much money, they're gone. They're going to tear it down, they're going to put housing. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. And how are we going to deal with it? And the residents just don't want that much congestion. That's what I'm hearing. I'm not hearing about the Milton case. I'm not hearing any of that. I'm hearing this is not good for Tewksbury. That's why they're voting against it. I don't like it. I'm not voting for it. I'm just telling you right up front. I understand that, they're telling us that we must, but there's no one in town that says this is good for Tewksbury, but we have to do it. I'm not into, it doesn't make sense to me that we have to do something that's bad for us. And that's where it really comes down to. You must do something you know is bad for you, and you're probably going to have to pay for it. That's what it comes down to.
Okay, so let's move along in regards to the letter. I have no questions. I'll endorse with the letter myself.
I will make a motion to submit the letter and any associated documentation required through the town manager's office.
I'll second that.
On behalf of the board and the town manager, and allow Mr. Curran to work with Mr. Feely to prepare us in the direction for filing that with court.
Second for discussion. I do have a question or a potential friendly amendment. I would like to see verbiage in there about what was not addressed in the 3 letters that were sent out. It's mentioned about the funding that was available. We did take advantage of that funding and had NIMCOG support us. So I would like a clear definition of if that impacts us, because we did get funding. Additionally, if we can, as part of that request, see if there's a projection on when that financial analysis will be available. I think those are 2 very important pieces of information for us to have.
Yeah, I just don't want to, I mean, we have a very tight window. I want to push this forward as quick as possible.
I don't disagree, but I think those 2 pieces are very important for us to get to the next step, which is actually fighting this in court. And I think we would be remiss to not have those 2 items before we try to fight in court.
Okay.
Okay, I had a motion made by Mr. Ryder, second by Mr. Mackey. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And chair votes aye as well. That's a 4-0 vote. Mr. Curran, can you deal with Mr. Feely?
Yes, will do.
Thank you. John, I forwarded that to you.
I sent you, yep.
Thank you.
I got it, thank you.
Okay, next up is signature.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin.
Signature page, annual town warrant. No one's here for that.
So this is for the election, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is new to me. I mean, I've never seen this before, so that's rather interesting. But when I first saw it, I thought it was for the warrant. I said, it's too early, but it's for the warrant for the election.
Yeah, so signature page, annual town warrant election. Any questions from board members?
No, it's just a typical letter we sign every year.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to approve the letter.
I'll second, okay.
Motion made by...
Letter for Article 1, support it.
Motion made by Mr. Ryder, second by Mr. Mackey. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye as well. Next up, change of select board meeting date from April 22nd to April 29th. Did any issues with anybody on that?
I do have a conflict, but if nobody else has an issue, you should still have a quorum, so.
Okay. So, can I have a motion?
I make a motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion made by Mr. Ryder, second by Mr. Kratman, to change the meeting date of April 22nd to April 29th, 2025. Okay, now we're
Thank
into
you.
town manager report.
Can you pass that down there, okay, please?
Hey, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Some of this stuff we've already gone over because the reports are on the Trahan and also on some updates on some other things. But just briefly, good news, we did receive $400,000 from the state for the Tewksbury Hospital appropriation. And we expect to receive the remainder of that, $100,000 in April. And I just found out today, so it's not on this report, 2 other pieces of very good news. We're receiving $1.3 million in Chapter 90 money, as opposed to, I think, $800,000 or $900,000 is what you usually get. So we're getting a much bigger allotment for Chapter 90. And the other good piece of good news is we got that grant for the boilers, for the that green grant for the boilers to be replaced. So that's all good stuff. So smooth sailing for us in terms of grants and things, and that's all good news. And just keeping you in the loop on certain things, Sprinkle Street and County Road Water Improvement Project, $2.8 million. That project, that's it was awarded to Commonwealth Construction. That's obviously part of your commitment to $5.4 million in work, so things are moving ahead. So your intent is being carried out. Water MTU replacement contract, this is also implemented, and that's going to be done. There are approximately 3,600 meters that will be replaced. The estimated cost of that is about $1.2 million. This is part of the program that's been going on for 3 years, or will go on for 3 years. And so I talked to the DPW director, and having experience with this before, I wanted to make sure that there was a requirement that the meters are installed and that the onus is on the contractor to do that, because invariably what happens is there's always a few holdouts at the end. And I wanted to make sure that, and that will probably still happen, but we want to make sure that we get as many of those contracts, those meters installed by the contractor as we can, because that's just easier for us in the end of the day. I mean, I'm sure you've dealt with it. There's always someone, sovereign nation, that doesn't want to let you in the house and doesn't want to put the meter in, so.
Yeah,
That's when you just double the rate.
I'm about 98%.
Yeah, so.
That's 6,300 meters, I'm roughly, I think I've got less than 100.
That's not a bad number. Yeah.
I'm happy with that.
Yeah,
Again, and some internal plumbing issues that the town may have to do to work with residents and.
Yeah, so that was my focus on that contract, having been down that road before. Andover Street, Ames Pond Drive, traffic signal, that's an $84,000 project. It was awarded to Daigle Electric. They seem to do all the work around here. Host community agreement with, that's something you've already dealt with, but I did concur with Steve that didn't make a lot of sense. I mean, that stuff was all been gutted by the legislature, so, it didn't make sense not to grant the waiver. East Point Energy, you saw that presentation. We met with them. It's encouraging that they're moving along. I mean, these are very complicated projects and proposals, not the least of which is dealing with the utilities themselves. So that will be probably my focus on the town's behalf, is making sure that, that we're able to work well with the utilities on this proposal. So those are some of the things that we're working on, but it's been a good week for the town of Tewksbury.
Mr. Chairman, answer to Mr. Curran. On the Chapter 90, was that all appropriated as one payment, or was it a supplemental, the initial payment, your annual, and then was there a wrap funding, or was it all?
So we get reimbursed for each project. So we don't get the money.
Sure. I just didn't know it was increased. The number was increased from last year.
Yes.
The appropriation. I just didn't know if that was a supplemental. In years past, they gave it under your annual appropriation, usually $890,000 for the town, and they usually
it was listed as 1.3 million, but I had the same, I think, question that you have, is this the new level?
I think
I'm not sure that it is.
They used to call it RAP funding, winter recovery funding, and gave basically 50% of what your last year's was. So if you're getting 850, they get you 1.3. So I just didn't know, are they calling it a supplemental, or is this going to be our annual appropriation? I know the MMA has pushed for an increase in Chapter 90 funding for the last 50 years annually, and we fill out, I know the communities fill out their need, so just didn't know if this is...
I'll get an answer for you. I'll put it in the next report.
I haven't seen anything, but...
Yeah. I wonder the same thing. Is this, just an anomaly, or are we going to see this again?
Mr. Chairman, I just have one last thing for the town manager. You brought up the Tewksbury State Hospital and the work being done and all the stuff going on with the funding reimbursement. But we had them in, and they were doing a study on safety, and they were supposed to get back to us on how they were going to implement all that, and I haven't heard boo on what's going on, and we are getting to spring, and the kids are going to be down the fields again. So I would like to know if they plan to come back to us. They said they hired a new head of security, they were going to do some work there, and they were going to have, get their study completed and get us a copy of it, and how they, and then what they were going to do to implement it. And well, I don't know, have you heard from them at all?
Not yet, but I will.
You can reach out to them, that'd be great.
To get some of the history of that, because that was sort of happening as I came.
Yeah, I said it's happening the whole year before. There was a number of incidents, and it just seemed to be increasing, and residents was concerned, so we brought them in to ask some what they're doing on security and making sure that people were not running off the grounds into the public way.
Yeah.
So we need a little bit of information on how they're going to handle it.
All right, I'll follow up on that.
Yeah.
So just to add a little bit of context to that, I've had a number of discussions with the state hospital since they were last in here. They did hire that new director of security. I won't speak for Chief Columbus, but my understanding is that things have improved drastically, and they've actually put a number of policies in place, because I believe one of the major points was every person, even if somebody was leaving a voluntary program, they were not in the psych unit, it was being considered an A-way, which is like an AWOL. That is no longer the case, and they have now bifurcated how they are defining those people, and there is much closer communication with Tewksbury Police. So I look forward to them coming in and presenting that.
Well, I
to the
appreciate
public.
you looking into that, I do, because it's like I said, they did come and tell us they were going to give us this information. I'm glad that you got it, but the rest of us haven't seen it, so I would like to know.
Yeah, no, I've spoken to about
Thank
3 or 4 times since, so.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay, next is town council invoice for January 16th and to the 31st, 2025. Any questions?
Make a motion, Mr. Chair, to approve the town council invoice January 16th through January 31 for $4,590.
I'll second that.
Okay, I have a motion made by Mr. Ryder, second by Mr. Mackey. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye as well. Mr. Ryder, you're on the spotlight now,
Yes,
minutes.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes of October 16, 2024, please.
I have a motion made by Mr. Ryder, second by Mr. Mackey. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The chair votes aye as well. Now, board member reports.
I got one more.
There's another
Mr.
one.
Chair.
I was going to
Oh,
say
you
there's
do?
another minute.
Chair?
I only got one.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to
January
make a
7th.
motion to approve January 7, 2025 meeting minutes.
Second.
Okay, a motion made by Mr. Ryder, second by Mr. Kratman. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye as well. That's unanimous, 4-0. Board member reports. We'll start with Mr. Ryder.
We have the Building Reuse Committee. We have a meeting next week, next Wednesday. Yes, a week from tomorrow, the 12th. And we'll be, the committee is working to put together and working with Mr. Curran and the superintendent to put together a RFP. Yeah, an RFP for a full study of all of our facilities to get that process moving in the right direction, and then that will come back to the committee, and then a direction will be moved forward from there.
And I think that the board, I think you created the committee, right? The board did? The board will have to extend the committee if it so desires in order for the committee to continue forward with the RFP process.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know what the date on that, so we could discuss it.
Just be on your agenda.
Yeah, I think we can discuss it on the 12th. Kind of, we were looking at dates, how long we wanted to look at.
Yeah.
Discuss that on the 12th, then bring it back to this board for a meeting after that for the extension.
Well, didn't Mr. Russo send an email saying that he wanted to come before this board to do his presentation? I thought he
I
did.
know he does, yeah.
Maybe.
I thought he did. I'll
Okay.
find out.
Yeah, I don't know if he would, he
I wasn't at that meeting.
He wants to come before the board, because ultimately their mission or their task given to them by you is that they needed to report back to the
Right.
board. So they're basically going to report back.
I think it's on the 25th he
Yeah,
wanted to do
yeah,
it.
And they want to do it in a timely fashion before town meeting, obviously.
Yep. No,
That's it, Mr. Ryder?
that's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Mr. Mackey?
Well, it's my turn this meeting
There you
to
go.
say that Mr. Ryder has covered it. So I
Yeah,
am
there you go. I got him last time, so thank you.
Mr. Kratman?
There was an LRTA meeting last Thursday of the Board of Directors, and unfortunately, I think a lot of people heard there was an accident in town with a bus down in Stadium Plaza. It doesn't appear that it was somebody crossing the roadway. It seems like there was some sort of incident. It's still under investigation, so I'm not going to comment on it. That's a police matter for them to look at. But I know there was a number of people concerned that it doesn't seem like speed or that was a factor, and a bus was traveling too quickly or something like that. Sounds like there was, some sort of incident that was, but the investigation will go forward. But unfortunately, that happened, and that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
I just have one thing. I'd like to thank, or congratulate Eagle Scout Michael Casey. I presented him his award last week, and I congratulate him and all the scouts that were there that were Eagle Scouts. With that, I'm done.
Mr. Chair, if I may, one last quick thing. Thursday night, I want to wish Tewksbury girls hockey and Tewksbury boys hockey. They're playing at 6 and 8 o'clock. So wish them all luck, and as they continue towards the Garden.
Is that, they play Malden Catholic?
Yes, both of them are playing Malden Catholic.
Where are they playing?
I believe, might be Stoneham. I'll send you, I'll get you that to you.
Mr. Chairman, motion to adjourn.
Motion adjourned by Mr. Mackey, second by Mr. Ryder. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye as well. That's unanimous. Good night, Tewksbury.